It had been almost a year since we'd broken up when I got the text. Hey, weird ask, but you free this weekend? Need a hand moving? I stared at it for a minute, then another. My thumb hovered over the screen as my brain sprinted through every logical reason to just ignore it. But of course I didn't. Yeah, sure. What time? Saturday? Noon? I'll buy you coffee. And lunch. And maybe my soul? That was so Mason. We hadn't talked much since the breakup. Not because we hated each other. There was no screaming match or betrayal. It was one of those quiet endings that come not with fire, but with exhaustion. We were tired of trying, tired of being versions of ourselves that only worked in theory. The last time I saw him was at a friend's birthday party 4 months ago, and we did the whole awkward nod and how's work routine before avoiding each other the rest of the night. So why was I saying yes? Probably because I wanted to see if he'd changed. Or maybe I just wanted to see him. Saturday rolled around, gray and humid. The kind of day where the sky can't decide if it wants to rain or just make you sweat. I pulled up to his building, our old building technically, at 11:59, and spotted Mason on the sidewalk, crouched by a stack of cardboard boxes, wrangling a roll of packing tape. He looked up, and for a split second, it felt like nothing had changed. Still punctual, huh? He said, standing up and wiping his hands on his jeans. Still using the same coffee bribe to get people to carry your crap. I shot back. We both smiled, that brief flash of familiarity flickering between us like a match struck in the dark. The next hour was all sweat and sarcasm. We loaded boxes into my hatchback and his borrowed van, making trip after trip from the third floor walk-up. I tried not to notice the little things, how he still hummed when he was focused, or how he'd chew his bottom lip when lifting something heavy. So where's the new place? I asked as we slammed the van doors shut. North side. Smaller, but better light, closer to work. Cheaper, too. I nodded. Sounds smart. He didn't reply right away, just looked at me and said, Thanks for coming, by the way. I know it's weird. It's not that weird, I lied. The new apartment was on a quiet street above a florist, with wide windows and scuffed hardwood floors. The kind of place that looked better once it was lived in. We started hauling boxes inside, stacking them against blank white walls. I carried a box labeled office/junk into the bedroom and set it near the closet. Cool if I start unpacking this one? I asked, already peeling the tape. Yeah, just be careful, there's some fragile. But it was already too late. On top of a few notebooks and folders sat a small brown envelope. No name, no label. I grabbed it without thinking, then paused. It was light, but thick with something inside. When I turned it over and slid out the contents, my heart tripped over itself. It was a bundle of photos. Us. Me and Mason. Laughing on the beach. Half asleep in bed. Drunk selfies. A note in my handwriting from a birthday card. A concert ticket stub with his name scrawled on the back. All of it bundled neatly with a piece of twine. I blinked. Swallowed. Hey. I called, not moving. What's this? He stepped into the room, holding a water bottle, and froze when he saw what was in my hand. Oh, shit. I forgot that was in there. You kept this? Mason scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, I don't know. I was gonna toss it eventually. Just hadn't yet. I looked down at the photos again. My face in his old hoodie. His arm around me. That look we used to give each other when we thought no one else was watching. So why didn't you? He hesitated. Because I wasn't ready, he said finally. And maybe I thought, I don't know. Maybe I thought someday I'd want to remember the good parts. The room felt smaller suddenly. Tighter. I could feel the weight of the past pressing in from every direction. You could have told me, I said, not even sure what I meant by it. I didn't think I had the right. He was standing too close now. Close enough that I could see the little crease between his brows, the one that only showed up when he was trying to hold something back. And for the first time in almost a year, I didn't feel angry or sad or nostalgic. I felt curious. What else had he kept? I should have just put the envelope back. I should have tossed it into the junk drawer of his new kitchen, cracked a joke, and moved on like a normal person. But instead, I sat down on the floor, photos still in my hand, the weight of them somehow heavier than anything we'd carried all day. Mason stayed standing, watching me, water bottle forgotten in his grip. "These are all from the first year," I said after a moment, flipping through the stack. "You remember that trip to Boston? The Airbnb with the squeaky bed?" He huffed out a laugh. "You kept yelling at me for breathing too loud. You were breathing too loud, and you brought 2 different conditioners for a weekend trip. I have complex hair needs." He smiled, but there was something fragile about it. "You really didn't throw these away?" I asked quietly. Mason leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting across from me, legs stretched out. "I tried. I really did, like 3 different times. But something stopped me every time. I'd look at them and just couldn't do it." "Why?" His gaze dropped to the floor between us. "Because you were the only thing that ever felt like home." I looked at him, not sure what to say. There was no drama in his voice, no performance. Just the kind of honesty that hits late, like rain after a long drought. "I used to think if I held on to these," he continued, nodding toward the bundle, "it meant I wasn't moving on, like I was still living in it. But lately, I think maybe it just means I valued it. Us. Even if it didn't work." I turned one of the photos over. On the back, in his writing, it said, "He makes me feel safe." I hadn't known he'd written that. "Why now?" I asked. "Why'd you ask me to help today? You could have texted anyone." He laughed once, under his breath. "I could have, yeah, but I didn't want anyone else." I looked at him again and he met my eyes. "I didn't think you'd say yes," he added. "I almost didn't, but you did." "Yeah," I said. I did. We spent the next hour unpacking the box together, like 2 people carefully digging through their past with padded gloves. There were other things inside. Small, stupid things that meant a lot if you knew the context. The pen he'd used to write our first lease together. The broken keychain I bought him after he lost his spare. A sock I swore had vanished forever in our old laundry machine. We laughed a little too long at nothing, and it started to feel less heavy. "I used to think if I saw you again, I'd feel angry," I said, stuffing some bubble wrap into the trash pile. "But I don't." Mason was quiet for a second. "What do you feel?" I sat back on my heels. Sad. And maybe curious. "Curious how?" "About whether this," I gestured around, "could have gone differently." Mason nodded slowly. "I've thought about that too, if we'd been less tired. More patient, if I hadn't shut down every time you asked how I was really doing." I looked over. "You did do that a lot." "I know," he said. "I thought being vulnerable meant being weak, especially around someone I actually loved." There was no air in the room for a second. "You loved me?" I asked, not sure if I was ready to hear it. He gave me a look like it was the dumbest question I'd ever asked. "Of course I did. I still." He trailed off, then caught himself. "I don't know," he said. "It's not the same now. But yeah, I loved you. I probably didn't show it the way you needed, but I did." My throat tightened. Not in a sad way. More like relief. "You weren't easy," I said. "But you weren't fake. You never lied about who you were." "Just tried to hide parts of it," he muttered. "Yeah, but don't we all?" By the time the sun started setting, we'd emptied half the boxes and ordered Thai food. I stayed longer than I meant to, sipping a beer on the floor while Mason fiddled with his new Wi-Fi router. We didn't talk about getting back together. That wasn't what this was. But something had shifted. He walked me to my car around 9. The street was quiet, that golden hour hush that always made the city feel softer than it was. "Thanks for helping," he said, hands in his hoodie pockets, "and for not, I don't know, hating me." "I never hated you," I said, unlocking the door. "I just stopped knowing how to be around you." "Do you think?" he began, then paused. Do you think we'll ever be good at that again? Maybe, I said, but even if not, I'm glad I came today. He nodded, then reached out and pulled me into a hug. Not casual, not romantic, just warm. I really did love you, you know, he said against my shoulder. I held on a second longer than I meant to. I know, I said. I did too. And then I got in the car and left. But I couldn't stop thinking about the photo. The way he held it. The way I felt seeing it again. Because what he hid in that box wasn't just a stack of memories. It was proof that what we had mattered. Even if we didn't last. I didn't go home right away. I parked outside my place, engine off, fingers still on the steering wheel, and just sat there. The city buzzed around me. That late Saturday hum of couples walking home from dinner, and Ubers idling at corners. But all I could think about was a cardboard box in a North Side apartment and the way Mason had looked at me like maybe, just maybe, some part of him still wasn't done. I didn't want to read too much into it. I told myself it was nostalgia, that classic post-breakup ache that flares up when you see someone you once loved doing fine without you. And he was doing fine. The new place was nice. He was still the same Mason, messy and stubborn, smart without trying, emotional in ways he never let show. But that photo, he could have burned it. Could have buried it at the bottom of a drawer or tossed it in the trash without a second thought. Instead, it had been wrapped in twine, stored carefully, like something he was holding on to in case he ever needed it again, like something he still needed. Sunday morning, I woke up late and with way too much on my mind. I had plans to meet friends for brunch, but I bailed. I couldn't focus on conversation, couldn't fake small talk about dating apps or office drama. My brain kept rerunning yesterday like a movie I didn't want to stop watching. So I did something I hadn't done since we split. I pulled out my old shoebox from under the bed, the one I swore I'd thrown away after we broke up, but apparently couldn't bring myself to toss. Inside were the things I never admitted I kept. Concert wristbands, a pair of socks Mason left in my laundry that I never returned, a photo strip from that terrible photo booth at the fair, a folded napkin from the diner where we had our first real fight and somehow made it through. And there, at the bottom, was the one photo I didn't expect to see again. The same one Mason had, the one of me sleeping in his hoodie, except this one had a note on the back in my handwriting. Keep me warm, come home when you're ready. I didn't remember writing that, but I must have. And suddenly, I wasn't just reliving memories. I was realizing that I'd left a piece of myself with him too. On Monday, he texted, "Hey, not trying to be weird, but I found another thing while unpacking. Oh yeah, want to come by and grab it, or I can drop it off?" I hesitated. "I can swing by after work." "Cool, I'll be here." It was dark by the time I got there. The street was quiet, lit only by the glow of a corner cafe and a flickering neon sign 2 doors down. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, unsure why my heart was pounding. Mason opened the door in pajama pants and a threadbare long-sleeve shirt I immediately recognized, one he used to steal from my drawer like it belonged to him. He held up a small box, one of those plastic containers you'd put photos or letters in. "This was in the linen bin for some reason," he said. "You left it here after we broke up. I think you said you didn't want it anymore." I took the box from him, opening the lid slowly. Inside were a few postcards from trips we'd taken, my favorite candle that cracked halfway through burning, and a mix CD, yeah, an actual CD, I'd made him as a joke once, called Mason's Sad Gay Boyfriend Anthems. I looked up at him, and he was already watching me. "I should have known you'd keep that," I said. He smiled. I tried not to. We stood in the doorway for a second, neither of us stepping back. "Can I come in?" He moved aside. "You don't have to ask." The apartment felt warmer this time, lived in. There was a blanket tossed over the couch, a few candles half burned on the windowsill, and a record playing softly in the background. "Didn't know you were still into vinyl," I said, dropping onto the couch. "I'm not," Mason replied, heading to the kitchen. "But you are, so I bought a player." He said it casually, but my brain snagged on the implication. For when I'm here? I asked, testing the air. For whenever. For whoever, he said, then paused. But yeah, for you too. Later, we sat across from each other at the tiny kitchen table eating leftovers and drinking from mismatched mugs. It felt easy again, comfortable. Like we'd time-traveled back to when things weren't so messy between us. And then, after the silence stretched too long to ignore, he asked, "Do you ever think we gave up too early?" I looked at him. Really looked. Mason wasn't trying to bait me. He wasn't playing games. He just looked tired. Honest. Like a part of him had been waiting for the right moment to ask that question since the day I walked out. "I think we got overwhelmed," I said. "We didn't know how to fix things, so we assumed we couldn't." He nodded slowly. "I still don't know if we could, but I haven't really wanted to try with anyone else." My chest ached. Not in the heartbroken way, more like recognition. "I haven't either," I admitted. The silence between us wasn't tense. It was just there. Full of potential. He reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. No pressure, no expectations, just contact. A reminder that whatever was in those boxes we unpacked, memories, mistakes, leftover pieces of something we used to call love, some of it still mattered. And maybe, just maybe, it still had room to grow. I should have gone home that night. I had work the next morning, a stack of emails waiting, a report I hadn't finished, but something in me didn't want to leave. And Mason didn't ask me to. We stayed at that table long after the food was gone, mugs empty, the overhead light dimmed low. His hand stayed near mine, not quite holding it, not quite letting go. At one point, he leaned back and exhaled slowly, like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long. "I think part of me thought I'd never see you again," he said. "At least not like this." "Like what?" "Here, talking, not pretending we're strangers." I nodded. "Same." Then he said something I didn't expect. "I almost texted you on my birthday, but I didn't want to ruin your night." I looked up. "I was going to text you too. I had the message written out and everything." "What did it say?" I paused. "Something stupid. Like, 'Happy birthday. Hope the cake was worth turning 30 for.'" He laughed quietly. That would have made my whole night. We sat in that moment, letting it hang. And then I said it before I could second-guess myself. "Mason, what are we doing?" He looked at me, his expression unreadable, but his voice was steady. "I don't know, I just know that you're here. And I don't want you to leave yet." I followed him into the living room. There was a spot on the couch where the cushions sagged slightly, like two people had already claimed it 1,000 times. We sat there, barely touching at first. Then slowly, without even meaning to, my shoulder brushed his. He didn't pull away. "You think we're just doing this because we're lonely?" I asked. He looked over. "Are you lonely?" I thought about it. All the quiet nights. All the mornings waking up with no one next to me. The way my apartment echoed even when I wasn't making a sound. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Me too," he said. "But this doesn't feel like lonely. Not tonight." It didn't happen like a movie. There wasn't a slow fade-in or music swelling in the background. It was simple. Mason shifted slightly, angled toward me, and I turned too. Our faces were closer than they should have been. Breaths shallow, eyes searching. And then, without warning, he kissed me. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet, soft, like he was asking a question he didn't know how to phrase out loud. I kissed him back, because I wanted to. Because I hadn't stopped thinking about it. Because maybe this time, it didn't have to end the way it did before. When we pulled apart, neither of us said anything. He just leaned his forehead against mine, breathing a little faster. "I don't know what this means," I said. He nodded. "We don't have to define it right now." I don't want to mess this up again. You're not. That night, I didn't sleep in my own bed. I stayed, but not like before. Not with all the weight of a relationship we were trying too hard to hold together. This felt different. Lighter, slower. I fell asleep on his couch with Mason next to me, our legs tangled, the box of memories still sitting unopened a few feet away. In the morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and a quiet hum of music from the kitchen. Mason was there, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, making 2 cups like it was just another Sunday. I stepped in, and he looked up. "Cream still, right?" "Yeah." He handed me the mug, and we stood in the kitchen like we used to. But not exactly like we used to. Better. We didn't talk about the kiss for a few days. We both needed space to think, to breathe. But we kept texting, sharing playlists, inside jokes. And one night, he sent me a photo. The hoodie. The one from the photo he kept. He'd found it again, tucked into the bottom of a storage bin. Underneath, he'd written, "Still smells like you, or maybe I just wanted it to." I didn't reply right away, but the next day, I went back. Not to help him unpack, not to chase something that had already died, but maybe, just maybe, to see what we could still build from what was left. The second time I showed up at Mason's new apartment, it didn't feel like I was doing him a favor. I didn't knock either. I just texted downstairs, and he buzzed me up without saying a word. When he opened the door, he had that look, not flirty, not nervous, just soft, like he was genuinely glad to see me. "You came," he said. "You left your playlist half finished," I replied, holding up my phone. He smiled. "Can't have that." We ordered Thai, again, ate on the floor, again. But this time, everything felt easier. Like we weren't pretending to be anything but 2 people who'd loved each other once, and maybe still did, in a different way. At one point, I caught him staring. "What?" He hesitated. "I was just thinking, you're calmer now." "Is that a compliment?" "Yeah," he said. "It is. I used to be afraid of your silence, remember? Thought it meant you were pulling away." "I was never pulling away," I said quietly. "I was trying not to say the wrong thing." Mason nodded. "I know that now." After dinner, he pulled out the box again, the one with the twine, the old notes, the things he hadn't thrown out. He sat cross-legged and opened it, motioning for me to sit next to him. Inside, there was something new, a small notebook. "You wrote in it?" I asked. "Started about a month after we broke up. Just things I didn't say, things I didn't know how to say." "Can I read it?" He didn't answer, just handed it to me. I opened to the first page. "I miss waking up before him and watching him sleep, even though he'd say that's creepy." I flipped to another. "He never realized how much I envied the way he could sit in silence and not rush to fill it. I thought I had to entertain every second." Another. "I still wear his hoodie when I'm hungover. It makes me feel like I'm not totally alone." And then, "I wish I told him that I loved him while we were still in love, not after." My chest tightened. I glanced at Mason, who was picking at the fraying edge of the rug, avoiding my eyes. "You could have told me," I said. "I didn't know how. You were always so sure of your feelings." I was terrified mine weren't enough. "They were," I said. "You just didn't believe it," he nodded. "I do now." We didn't kiss that night. We didn't fall into bed, or try to recreate something that had already burned out once. We just sat there, closer now than we'd been in years, reading old memories like they were stories written by strangers we used to be. At one point, I reached for his hand. He didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. "Why'd you really ask me to help you move?" I asked. He thought about it for a second. "Because I wanted to see if there was anything left." "And?" He looked over. "There is." That night, before I left, he walked me to the door again. But this time, when he leaned in, he didn't kiss me. He just whispered, "Let's not rush this, but don't disappear again, okay?" I nodded. "I won't." And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. The following weeks were a quiet blur of small things. Late-night texts. Shared Spotify links. Inside jokes again. But now without the edge of nostalgia that used to sting. We weren't rushing. We weren't labeling. We were just there. It was weird how natural it felt. And a little unfair, honestly. Like, why couldn't we have figured this out before? But maybe we had to fall apart first. Maybe we had to learn how to be without each other before we could figure out if we still wanted to be with each other. One night, he called. Not a text, not a meme, a full-on old-school phone call. "You busy?" he asked. "Just cooking," I said, trying not to burn pasta again. "Still using olive oil like it's holy water?" "Some of us believe in flavor." He laughed, then went quiet for a second. "Want to come over?" I looked at the pot boiling behind me, shrugged. "Yeah, be there in 20. That night, we didn't talk much. We didn't have to. He had a movie already queued up, and we sat on the couch, legs touching, shoulders brushing. Halfway through, I felt his hand inch closer. I turned my palm up and let his fingers slide into mine. It wasn't romantic, exactly. It wasn't even a big deal. It just felt right. At one point, he leaned over and said softly, "I keep waiting for this to feel like a mistake." And it doesn't. After the movie, I stayed. We didn't sleep together, not in the way we used to, but I slept in his bed. My side, the left, like always. He brought me a glass of water and a hoodie from the closet without asking, like he already remembered what I needed without me saying anything. That night, lying in the dark, I turned to him. "You really thought I was going to disappear?" He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I think part of me still expects people to give up on me." "Well," I said, sliding closer, "then maybe it's time to stop expecting that." He looked at me, eyes tired but soft. "I'm glad you found that box," he said. I smiled. "Me too." The next morning, we made breakfast together. He tried to scramble eggs and somehow got shells in all of them. I made coffee too strong and burned the toast. But we laughed through it. Music playing low in the background, sunlight cutting across the counter. It felt like we were relearning each other, not trying to be who we were before, just figuring out who we could be now. After we ate, he pulled me in without warning and kissed me in the kitchen, slow and steady, like he wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. And this time, I kissed him back with no hesitation. Later, as I was getting ready to leave, he asked, "Hey, do you want to leave a toothbrush here?" I paused in the doorway, turned back to him. "That's a big step," he shrugged. "I'm not asking you to move in. Just feels dumb to pretend this isn't happening." I smiled. "Yeah, all right." He walked over, kissed my temple, and whispered, "Round 2? I nodded. "Let's try not to fuck it up this time." By the end of the week, Mason and I had settled into a rhythm that neither of us had expected. It wasn't official. We didn't have labels, but it was more than casual, more than just friends. There was a weightlessness to it, a sense that we were allowed to be ourselves around each other again. The next weekend, I went over to help him with a few more boxes he hadn't unpacked. I figured this would be nothing. Quick trip, a couple of heavy lifts, a pizza afterward. But then I saw it. A smaller box tucked into the corner of his closet. Nothing fancy, just plain cardboard, the flaps bent from wear. I recognized that same careful look in how he'd stashed it away, the same way he treated that envelope with the photos the first time. What's this one?" I asked. Mason froze for a moment. Then slowly he said, "You really want to see it?" I did. And I didn't. He handed me the box. I opened it. Inside was everything he'd hidden from me over the years. Letters I'd never read, scribbles he'd made about us in notebooks, little souvenirs I didn't even know he'd kept, ticket stubs, pressed flowers, a keychain I thought I'd lost. And at the bottom, wrapped in a small cloth, was something that made my breath stop. The old photo of me asleep in his hoodie. Only this time, there was a note attached. His handwriting, old and deliberate. Some things I couldn't throw away because they're proof. Proof that I loved you, even when I was too scared to say it. I looked up at him. He was standing there, watching me carefully, arms crossed but his posture soft, vulnerable in a way that didn't come easily to him. "I didn't know you felt that way," I whispered. "I tried to hide it," he admitted. "Because I thought you'd laugh, or I'd be too obvious, or, I don't know, I thought I'd lost my chance." "You didn't," I said, voice catching. "You just waited. Too long. He shook his head. I just didn't know if you'd want to see it. But now, I don't want to hide anymore. Not from you. Not ever. I swallowed, my hands trembling slightly as I set the photo back in the box. I think maybe I kept some things too, I said. Stuff I didn't even realize I wanted to save. Until I saw you again. Mason's eyes softened. He stepped closer. So, we still have a chance? I nodded. Yeah, we do. He smiled. Real, warm, the kind that makes your chest ache. And then he leaned down and kissed me, slow and certain, like he'd been practicing this moment in his mind for years. I kissed him back, finally letting go of the fear, the hesitation, the memory of every time we'd let each other slip away. The boxes in the corner of the room didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that we were here, together, choosing each other again. When we pulled back, Mason whispered, "No more hiding, no more waiting." Agreed, I said. And in that small, cluttered apartment, surrounded by all the memories he'd kept from me, I realized something. The things we hide, our fears, our regrets, our love, aren't lost forever. Sometimes they just wait for the right person to find them, and I had found him.